are like parasites. They live on our suffering. They slurp it in. It's delicious. When we fight with each other, there are invisible beings around that are eating that. They eat terror. They eat anger. They eat fear. They eat despair. They eat delusion. They love it. They like to cause it. They sow seeds of that, perhaps, in our world. So it's important for us to raise our vibration by not eating animal foods, by regular meditation, by questioning, by sending forth from our heart love and compassion and joy and peace to all beings all the time. Hum within ourselves, may all beings be happy, may all beings be free, may all beings awaken. Just hold that feeling, hold that thought. Then our vibration is blessing others. Then the vibration, then we're not going to, there's no way these parasitic entities can come in and make us fight with someone, can make us eat animal foods, can come in and tempt us to lower our vibration to the point where we're getting sucked into violence and delusion. It's up to each one of us to maintain our vibratory level at the level of truth. And it's an infinitely, I mean, there's no end, I don't think, to the heights of vibratory possibilities. We can go higher and higher and higher, I think, with no end. But it brings us out of the delusion of time and space, for one thing, the idea that we're separate from each other. I mean, in a sense, even our science shows that even though it's based on materialism, it's being forced to go beyond itself and seeing that we're interconnected with all our molecules and atoms and everything else. It's a sea of interconnected life going on, and what appear to be separate beings is really an illusion. Most of the cells in this body are not even my cells. They're organisms, they're bacteria and other beings, and that there's literally trillions of viruses living in my body right now. And if they died, if they left, I would die right instantly. I would be dead. I mean, viruses are not our enemy. Bacteria are not our enemy. If the bacteria all died, I'd be dead instantly. This body couldn't function without this whole orchestration of life that's going on. So who is the self? What is the self? And that's the question. Who is the being? And of course, we can identify with a physical body, but the idea is we're living in our body of our beliefs. And so if we understand our true body is an eternal body, right? It was never born and will never die. That's our true body. It's not a physical body. There's perhaps different levels. We can say there's an astral level, a mental level, a Buddhic level, and so forth. But these different levels, as our consciousness matures and we function from these levels, then we begin to realize that this physical level is not our true nature. And the interesting thing is that when that happens, the physical level naturally comes into harmony. It just, without trying to be healthy, the physical body has enormous health because we're not this body. The more I think I'm this body and try to do everything to make my body healthy, right? I get sort of nervous about, well, gosh, maybe I shouldn't eat this, maybe I should do that, maybe I should, I mean, it's good to be aware. I'm saying it's good to be conscious, not to eat chemicals and toxins and so forth. But when we realize that what we are is the infinite life that was never born and will never die, then that understanding flows as music through every cell in our being. And every cell in our being is eternal. Every cell in this physical body, even, there's no reason for them to die, right? I mean, there's no necessity for that to happen. If we have a purpose, if we're living a purpose that is coming from the highest level, and it's coming through us clearly, without any encumbrance. If we're a radio station tuned to the infinite divine vibration that transcends the mask, right? The mask of, the word mask. It's the old word persona, right? The Greek word persona means mask, persona. It's per means through, sona means sound. So you speak through, you sing through this mask, and that's the persona, is the personality. We identify with the persona, or the personality. That's the illusion, this fundamentally separate self, trying to impress people and be well liked and so forth. And so the whole idea is that when we're living our life authentically, that really means we're acting on our intuition, on our inner wisdom, and we're sourcing the guidance in our life, not from the program from our society, which is based on animal agriculture and materialism and delusion and separateness and violence, but we're connecting with our true nature, which is eternal, and letting that come through us. Then I think we'll find that our physical body naturally responds to that in ways where if we have some kind of or have had some kind of physical problem, it will evaporate in what doctors say is a medical miracle. This happens all the time. All the time there are medical miracles. I'm sure it happens thousands and thousands of times every day on this planet, where people they call it a spontaneous remission. Cannot be, doctors in the material medical model can never explain how someone who has cancer and then suddenly one day it's gone. It's just gone. Sometimes it's through a transformation of much healthier food, but usually there's something else going on. There's an awakening, a healing of an emotional wound, the realization of a higher level of consciousness, the understanding of a deeper spiritual wisdom, liberation on some certain level biologically and spiritually go together. But it's the spirit that has the power. That is where the power is. The power is in the infinite spirit. There's no power in matter. Matter follows spirit. We live in a society because of based on animal agriculture. Even most vegans don't understand this. This is a big problem. They still are coming from the level of matter and thinking we're victims of matter. We're victims of what happens outside of us, and not realizing that as we ascend in our consciousness through work, through discipline, through practice, every day, every moment, then we will begin to have clarity. And it's important to do these practices. It's important to practice. This is not something that's just going to come by wishing. And I remember at one point, like my old Zen teacher told me, and I have to wrap it up here, but I remember, like, for example, he told me that he had done a practice that people in India used to do all the time, which was to walk for 72 hours without stopping. And I thought, wow, he had done it when he was a young guy in a garden somewhere. And he said it's a powerful practice. So finally, I got up my arranged everything so I could do it. I thought I would circumambulate a temple or do some kind of holy thing, but I ended up basically in the house where I lived in Oakland, California, walking around a cherry tree in the backyard. And it's a very difficult practice. I mean, I walked and walked, and I remember walking for a whole 12 hours without stopping. And I realized I had another 60 hours to go. It's like really incredibly difficult. So, but the main point I want to make is that by just doing that practice and not stopping and just keep going, I discovered things about my consciousness and about reality that we would normally never understand, because practices can help us to do this. We can get beyond the usual mind. And I learned, especially at night when I was walking, the first night, it wasn't too much, but by the second night, and especially by the third night, the experience I was having changed. The tree I was walking around, I was looking up at this cherry tree. Actually, I think it was a plum tree, and this plum tree came alive. And it wasn't alive the way biologists say. It's this tree. Like this tree, I could see was really alive. There was a being that was dancing that had enormous power, and it was a female presence. It felt like, and she was glorious and awe-inspiring. And I remember walking around this tree just with tears sometimes, just thinking, my gosh, what an amazing, I never knew this tree I never knew it was alive, I guess, And the flowers during the day would suddenly burst forth with color that I had never seen before. if we do practices that push us beyond the prison of the ego. I think at one point my ego, my rational mind went to sleep. It just couldn't keep going. And so something else was keeping me going. And it's like, it's something else. The true nature took over. I started to see how the world really is. As little children, maybe we see that. Maybe we see everything's alive. Maybe the flowers really are brilliant. Maybe there really are other beings around but we're taught very early on, no, this is all there is. Don't look in between anything. Don't look into the space. We learn, we're like little sponges. We soak that up. So it's really important for us, I think, to take time every day to quiet our mind, to listen, to open to the infinite and eternal consciousness that we are, and allow that to guide us. And it's helped me, that practice helped me ever since. I know the trees are alive. They're more than just trees. I saw that. I got a glimpse of that. And for that reason, I hate to cut a tree. I hate to harm them. But we're taught to just see forests as board feet of lumber and trees as just dead things and animals as dead things. If we would do practices, the ancient wisdom teachings, quiet our minds, we could escape these prisons of shallow living, of victimizing others and being victims ourselves. But if we don't do that, we'll be imprisoned ourselves in economic and political and religious and educational systems of slavery, just as we inflict on these animals. So this is the time. I mean, it's essential, I think, for all of us to question these official narratives, to realize that we live in the body of our beliefs, and to raise our consciousness and our belief system. Let our belief system reflect the awareness that is actually present. We can't get there through rationality. Rationality is a great tool, but to actually get there, we need to let go of our rational mind and get into the trans-rational capacities that we have, the capacity to know directly without the intermediary chatter of our minds, of thinking all the time. And that takes practice. It's like playing the piano. I couldn't just sit down, and I had to practice every day. But by doing that, I was able to find freedom. And all of us, this is true for all of us. Whatever we practice at, whatever we become disciplined in, we can go beyond the discipline to the joy and freedom of being. So I want to encourage all of you, and I want to thank all of you for being part of this conversation, for helping to create a context for questioning at the deepest fabric of our society, how we look at the world. Everything we think can imprison us in delusion. So it's important to be aware of that and to create a fabric that is based on letting go of the tendency to reify, to make everything into a thing. Music, I think, is so important. To the awareness of the flow of beautiful melodies that are streaming. Perhaps the sun is sending music to us, sending information, not just sending light, we don't know. I mean, what the sun is, we don't know. I mean, our science in many ways has as much validity as poetry, no more, no less. It's a way of looking through eyes, certain way of seeing. But it's time for us to realize that there is flexibility, and that there are horizons of awareness that go far beyond anything our materialistic science can even imagine, and not to allow ourselves to be trapped in those prisons, but to explore new possibilities. And that's why I think it's best to never be satisfied with whatever level of understanding we've attained. And there's always vistas that call us, that beckon us to higher levels. And so I'll stop there. I know it's important to have some time for Q&A. Thank you very much, everyone. And okay, so any questions? I'm happy to respond.
Hi, Dr. Tato, thank you so much. That was very inspiring, really makes us question, what we've been taught, really push boundaries sometimes. Maybe I'll just open the floor quickly for maybe one question before we go on to our next speaker. If any of the speakers would like to jump on to ask questions, feel free to unmute yourself, or I will pick out a few questions from our listeners. Okay, maybe I'll just move on to, I guess, one of the questions that we got from one of our listeners is, what are your thoughts on, how we can set our education right for kids? Because currently, obviously, they're brought up in a very rigid system where they're taught to go to school, learn maths, English, science, and then go and get a degree and then go out and work and make more money. So how do you think, we can make a change for the better in terms of that?
Well, yeah, that's a great question, and it's a huge question, because basically children are like little sponges. So however we are, they're going to become like us, and we create the institutions that they are raised in, and the educational system. I mean, I have a PhD in education, and my whole doctoral dissertation was on understanding the paradigms that we teach our children, right? We act like we're teaching them math and science, and we test them on that. And how well they do, but that's actually just this shallow surface level. What we're really teaching them is that knowledge is divided up into separate categories, that they have to please authorities to get ahead in the world, and we're teaching them regimentation. We're teaching things that are really ultimately dividing them from themselves and from each other and from nature. The whole structure of the class, sitting in rows, being a disembodied head, sitting there regurgitating information that we take in, really, if you want to create slaves, that's how you do it. And so we need, I mean, totally different. There's schools in Russia, some other places that are very different. One of the schools in Russia, I'm trying to think of the name. Anyway, it's a school where the children teach each other. The older students teach the younger students, and they teach by building. They live in a community. It's totally vegetarian or vegan, and they build buildings. They put on plays. They learn whatever they need to learn of mathematics or geography or history or so forth through doing, and through doing plays, and through acting, and through just there's really no adults involved. And I think, or just minimally involved. I mean, they're there a little bit, but basically they don't interfere too much. They just sort of and so what's really amazing is a tremendous. I've watched some documentaries and done some research into this school, and Schenectady, the Schenectady School, based on the work of Leonid Schenectady. But they do an incredible. They're so far beyond in terms of their academic abilities, anything that we can even begin. They're way beyond, because the natural yearning to learn in communities, it's stifled in our educational system. So it's unleashed when kids are playing together and working together and helping each other instead of competing, but always helping. The natural tendency, they live there. They're just like that. I was in Taiwan just a year ago, and I was weeping, less than a year ago actually, at these beautiful schools. It was based on Tibetan Buddhism, but the idea was it was very spiritual, and they grew their own food. It was totally vegan. The older kids taught the younger kids. There's no computers, very little computers. It's really based on learning from nature. And the kids were so beautiful. I can't, it's hard to put words into it. They were very humble and bright, and they spoke language. They learned languages. I mean, they were really intelligent. I mean, it was just incredible to see. They weren't with their families. They were like, it was a live-in situation, but their families, they would go to their families a few times a year, and the families were just amazed, like how different they were, how transformed they were, how happy and connected and intelligent and humble and bright. I mean, to see kids like this, it was so beautiful. I mean, there's no words for me to express the joy that I felt. It's actual reality. When you have a spiritual education, when you base education on spirituality, where kids are meditating every morning, where they're working with the earth, where they're building things together, where they're supporting each other, where the older kids are teaching the younger kids, and it's all based on cooperation and on the idea that it's not physical life is an aspect of spirituality, but what we truly are is spiritual. I mean, that's the foundation. That's the key thing. And it's a system with monks and nuns who help guide the whole thing. But I think education that's based on this idea is fantastic. Another great system that I've seen, it's not really a system, but I have friends in North Carolina who raised their 3 children with no schooling at all. I mean, they didn't go to school. It's called unschooling, and they just were part of the family, and these kids turned out really, really beautifully because they were also vegan. They learned by just doing. There was no curriculum. And they went on to become, one is a famous lawyer, another one's a well-known actor, I think actress. And anyway, they've done really well in the world, but which is to be expected. So because they have a locus. So I think really anything, my wife's a Waldorf school teacher. That's based on Rudolf Steiner's concept of learning. It's also based on spiritual education and learning by doing. You learn mathematics by building things and doing projects and being involved in that way. So the key thing, of course, is that the kids learn respect for animals, respect for nature, that they're vegan. That would be very important. And then out of that respect for animals and nature and each other, to build an educational system based on enhancing their natural inquisitiveness and creativity. So that's a whole frontier that would be wonderful to see more people engaging in all kinds of different ways. That's a great question.
Thank you, Dr. Turtle. I think that was, everyone found it really useful. It's a very new outlook on life that we can all take on board and, really use it, I guess, on a day-to-day basis.
It shouldn't be that new. Hopefully it's, but it is. I know what you mean. It is pretty new. Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, Western culture.
And thank you so much for joining us here today. Because we are quite tight on time, I would like to move on to our next speaker. Yeah, thank you, Dr. Turtle. I would like to, thank you. I'd like to introduce Preetha as our next MC for the rest of today to introduce our next speaker.
Thank you, Syria. Our next humble speaker for today's evening was born in the city of Nice in France. This spiritual speaker has always been drawn to the energy of simplicity and the beauty of natural state. His journey began at the age of 16, overcoming all the challenges that were thrown upon him in the quest of understanding the truth of human existence and the root of human suffering. Since then, this spiritual speaker has devoted his life to the study and practice of yoga, meditation, Tai Chi, and Tai in the form of non-dual and holistic. It is our greatest opportunity today to have him here with us. Dear viewers, I would humbly love to welcome Mr. Daya Dorje to give his speech on the door to immortality.
Vanakkam, thank you for the presentation. You are all so beautiful. This beauty is in you. Every being is full of love, compassion. Just that some of you have lost contact with it. I'd like to introduce this talk by sharing some experience and knowledge of my time in Vallalar, near Vallalar. I spent over 14 years going there every year and trying to understand and study the message of Vallalar. Before that, I started my path with the Tao teaching. Then I met my Tibetan Dzogchen master, the one really showed me and point out to me so I could experience inside me, I reconnect inside me with my true nature. In this tradition, they speak about rainbow body at the time of death, or the great transfer for very rare beings. It came a point where I felt that I had to move on. I had to learn more, I had to discover more. I didn't think in my mind, I just follow the journey. When I moved into the Kriya Yoga teachings from Avatar Babaji, studied two different lineages fully. When I say study, I practice it all. You know, I focus full time, all my energy and time into the practice. So I can grasp the essence of each teaching. And it's like putting back the puzzle together inside my being. It is Babaji, Avatar Babaji, who took me to Vallalar. The first time I walked into Yanasabai, the temple that Vallalar Saint Ramalinga has built, it's one of the rare temple that represents how the human being is conceived. There is no God inside whatsoever. Every aspect of the construction of the temple has a specific meaning in relation to how we are made, especially the Godhead here and above. I really spent a lot of time there. Stayed there also. And it is at this period that I really was able to discover in me what is grace, how grace function. What kind of alignment do you need to have within yourself for allowed grace to come in you? So if there is inner alignment in relation to how grace can come in you, it means that it is in synchrony with grace itself. So there's no more separation how the grace can flow to you. Nothing is impeding the grace to be in you. Even if my background was non-dual teaching before, and very strong non-dual teaching like Dzogchen, at first when I came to Vallalar, I kind of got lost because somehow all this way that the message and the practice was done there, it reconnected me with my past memory with Christianity. And become like, oh, dual, separation from the God that you pray to outside to the God inside you. But very fast I realized, that's not what it was meant to be. Before Vallalar locked himself in a room where he finalized his final transformation from transforming the physical matter into pure light, so he could become Arul Jothi, the vast grace light, the blazing fire of God, where everything can be created from. He gave to his disciple. Everybody was like, oh, please, please, don't go. Human beings like this, like if you observe how people are around teachers, gurus, they're always like, don't want to take their own responsibility, and they're always trying to reach outside to say, oh, please, bless me, what are we going to do, And he say, I give you the Maha Mantra, Aruljothi. Aruljothi, Taniperum Karuni Aruljothi. What does this mean? So we have Aruljothi, different way to translate. I say vast grace light. So what is this vast grace light? And why at first you say one time Aruljothi, then the second time Aruljothi, then you say Taniperum Karuni, supreme compassion, and then after you say Aruljothi again. So we have 4 sentences. First sentence, Aruljothi, means like from within yourself, you have aspiration. It's like, you know, you are the poor being there, you are suffering and all this, and you are calling upon, you know, it's like, oh my God, Aruljothi, can you hear me? And then you say the second Aruljothi is like Aruljothi Bob, the infinite vast grace light that abides in all life. Is it answer? Is it listening? And then the answer is starting to shake. Is in your core. And because he has infinite compassion, then by his compassion, it comes down to you and touch your inner heart. And you feel also the compassion inside. Only once you have discovered you are in touch with this love, compassion, pure presence within yourself, then yourself, you become Aruljothi. So that's why we have Aruljothi, Taniperum Karuni, Aruljothi. Vast grace light, supreme compassion, vast grace light. First time I came into Vallalar, as I was sitting in Yanasabai, it's a temple that I just explained before. This was the first time I felt the grace flowing through me, even after many years of practice and feeling the grace of the masters. But there it was a bit different quality. It was the grace, the absolute grace from the divine, not the grace from the blessing of a master and a teacher, which is very different. I started to cry. I was sitting there, you know, in front of the door of the Jyoti that is behind the 7 veils in the Jyoti. And then behind there's a mirror. I will explain this after. And then just like, crying. It's like all my body was starting to melt. At this time, I could not stay long in Vallalar, Metikupan. I had to go. But the next year I came back and I stayed long. And from this day on, I keep going for 14 years every year. Around 14 years, maybe a little more. Still going later, but less. Somehow, the divine consciousness, the masters, the immortals, they want me to be there. They can say, put me. So now you stay here. You have something to do. You have something to learn. You have a message to carry on. When I was very happy to meet what I felt like my spiritual brother, you know, Arul Jothi Anna Shrine, but now has passed away. And we had many years of cooperation together. You know, working in the translation, and me with my insight and my sensibility to feel things. I could feel, oh, this is not exactly the translation somehow, you know, and then I could walk in the words a bit different. And by doing this process, it was like the part of the sadhana, and I was receiving so much infusion of knowledge, because I was reconnecting this knowledge within myself also, And as both knowledge get in resonance and unify one with the other, because the outer knowledge of the books doesn't do much, even Vallalar say, you take all Vedas, Vedanta, Agamas, this is all lies, Bible, Quran, and all this, they tell you so many things, don't do that, don't do that, and then it takes you away from who you are, really, your true nature, That's what the vision of Vallalar, even at the beginning when he was a kid, he started really to apply the Siddha teachings. But then he realized this doesn't take us anywhere. It's too slow. We have to go directly. Through Vallalar teaching, somehow I reconnected with the original teachings of Christ, and also connecting the past lives, this and all both entangled together. And this was quite interesting. So Vallalar did manifest in front of me a few times and infuse this energy, vibration in me. And I think that's why I got keep going there. Having this exchange between the East and West. And sharing this exchange in some of the schools there, of lineage, Agnamala University also I was teaching sometime. So much grace, so much blessing. I saw many things there that I don't approve, like in most institutions, We have really to separate in some way. Sometimes it's good to separate, to see things the way that they really are. We have the original message. So in this case, we have the original message of Vallalar. And what is continued after is another story. It was the same for Yeshua Christ or any big teachers, immortals, enlightened beings. Because everyone understands his own way, So then when they are passing on the message, it is from their own vision, not from what the teacher before really transmitted. And most of the time, no, okay. Let's say Vallalar message and the realization is very high. It's extremely high, very difficult to reach in some ways, So many persons, they will say, okay, I want to go there. I'm doing this. But somehow they don't realize in themselves that they don't have capacity for that. So they are trying to project a reality that they could never reach, and they are not able to see the reality that is here in front of them now. So it's like if you want to climb a mountain and that you're looking only at the summit, you're never going to arrive at the summit. I used to be a mountain guide, and I know very well, used to take people up, and I did some very hard climbs also, and it really taught me a lot about myself and nature and how we have to relate with each other and how we are bound together, even in life-threatening situations. So then when you take a teaching, Vallalar or in Buddhism or whatever, you always have to understand, make some research first, to understand when the teacher spoke those words, in which condition he did speak those words. One cannot speak words for the eternity of time. Okay, in essence it is, but the way it is expressed might change with time because the audience change. You will not speak some of the high truth in the middle age, and now in the same way, you have to understand where people are coming from. If you understand where they are coming from and where are they, what is required for them to get the understanding and the knowledge, then you change the way you express things. So you cannot be stuck by what is written. And that's why, in some ways, Vallalar say, the Veda, Agamas, Upanishads are all lies, and other text. You cannot learn from books. Maybe some scholars are not going to like this, but it is. The only true knowledge can come from an inner experience within. Of course, some of the writings are like testimonies from the past teachers that can help you to put everything together so you come back here. But best is to have a teacher. Without a teacher, it's very difficult, at least to build the foundation. Once you have this good understanding about the map of yourself, how you are made and function at the physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual level, before that it's very difficult to be on your own. Because the field of experience is so vast, it's very easy to get sidetracked. So arriving to true knowledge within, it's a step, the first step in my understanding, in the way I teach and I communicate and I share. I would say I share more. I have nothing to teach. I can only share my experience. Of course, there's some methods who are there for a long time, or some methods I receive from immortals that can be taught. But in some ways, it's sharing. In some ways, teaching is like separation. Sharing means if I am there, I'm speaking about something, is because I have realized it inside. And through that manifestation of sharing, the vibration are going to reach you and enter in your cells and atoms that are going to resonate and vibrate with what I say and what or someone else say and vibrate. So it starts to shake, like it's like, okay, you are here, you want to pray, you say, Aruljothi, you are calling, and then the divine, after you say, Aruljothi, I'm here, hey, listen, then, you need the compassion. You answer back and you feel, thank you, I feel you in my heart. I know you're here, you're alive. And then when you feel that, it's kind of spark, lighten the spark inside you, and then, yes, like you can go back home, I'm back home here. This is my home actually. Or here. It's okay, no location. Yes. So when we speak about the compassion, the way I like to share with you is I don't believe in the relative compassion. Relative compassion is very much practiced in Buddhism. It's like you are training to yourself to do act of compassion. So maybe like this done in for example, with around Vallalar, many people feeding the poor, but they're not feeding the poor. Most of the time they're feeding rich people. They don't need it. So it becomes like, okay, I give meal freely and it's generating compassion, but this is not compassion. You know what I used to do with some students I had, taking groups in India, Western people in India, and going to Himalayas and different places. And I remember one time, I had, I only do small groups anyway, six people, it was probably something like this. And then I was telling them, we were in Bradinath, and I would say, okay, now tonight you're going to buy 5 meals, pack 5 meals. And you're going to walk around and only give the meals to whoever you are guided to give the meal. It turned out it was very difficult for most people, because they wanted to give the meal to people that they might associate these people need. This person needed. you know. So it's all association of mind from all the different filters that has been created through your education and your life. And the feedback of most persons who were there, students, you know, there was this, oh, we had very difficult, it was difficult, you know. But then after they realized, and then they're allowing to creating the space within to say, okay, let's follow the guidance, let's follow the grace then, because when you are following guidance, you have grace. You know, if you give meal just like this, you don't receive grace. This concept is an idea. You know? To receive the grace, you need to practice absolute compassion. Relative compassion is minimal. Even Vallalar says, you know, if you practice this relative compassion, he doesn't use the word relative, but maybe for Western people, that's what we understand best, because it is used a lot in Buddhism and we are more familiar with all this type of language. You know, you can never pass the third veil, the green veil of Parashakti. You know, but to go behind Parashakti, so to reach up the higher planes of the infinite Aruljothi, you know, it requires some practice, inner practice, to get the inner knowledge. And from there, to let the guidance take you to have acts of compassion. So when you are having compassion by letting this compassion arise by itself in a natural way, not by a concept of mind, then you can really experience that the grace flowing in you. Then the purification, the inner purification of the karmic traces and all start to happen. So if we look at it like this, what is most important? First, to gain inner knowledge. Inner knowledge, or how you function. In relation to this, there is a few little things I don't agree with some schools. And I think Vallalar the same way, because I remember being in Metikupan and having some talk with different swamis and gurus, you know, connected to Vallalar. And really it was saying like, you know, Vedanta, for example, I'm sorry for the scholars of Vedanta to say that, but I'm speaking what is my experience. When everyone does what he likes or speak how he's like, and everyone, we all share experience in different ways. This is how I'm sharing my experience and understanding, you know. Because everything, anyway, when we speak both things, there's so many different angles to say it, and at the end, maybe we all say the same thing. So there's no point to really discuss. But I don't want to create any problem with what I say. So I am I'm saying those words, you know, to make things shanti. You know, because when Vallalar even say, you know, Vedanta, Gama, Padeshas, even Siddhanta, Bodhanta, etc. He all say it's just lies, you know. What I see in many approach of the Vedanta, where there is in some ways negation of the body, or some of the school, even in Buddhism, when you look at the Heart Sutra, there's a lot of misunderstanding, in my opinion, because the people come disconnected from the physical body. But the physical body is God also. How can you be disconnected to physical body? How can you deny this body? If you deny this body, you deny that the cells don't have God inside. Doesn't have Aruljothi inside. All the microorganisms living in you don't have life then, if you deny the body. And you're turning yourself to only a higher plane of consciousness, you know, in English we say more the higher self, you know, denying everything else that is here. So then your actions are always going to be from there, but neglecting all this. And what do we see happening many teachers who are doing that, they are very unhealthy. They gain weight, they are there because they are only in the transcendental aspect. And that's in this way Vallalar was explaining, okay, so Vedanta on this, no, this is God here. Even if you take the image of Shiva Nataraja, is a cosmic dancer with the flute and standing in one leg. At the origin, the representation of Shiva Nataraja was just pure light. It didn't exist in the form of a physical body with the sphere and the flames and playing the flute. They're all symbols. So what those symbols mean? We have the physical body, so it's the Shiva dancing. Then around we have the sphere of light with the flames. This is like an energetical body, all around the sphere of golden light. It's the expansion of Ambalam within in Tamil. So will be that the sun that we are. Even in different traditions, you see that you are not limited to this. Your body is always here. Like you see the painting of Leonardo da Vinci, for example. And then the flute is like the sound of the universe, all different vibrations circulating within yourself and how you communicate with all life. And then it is dancing above a cripple, someone who was disable physically, but represent the ego, So originally, this is Ambalam actually. So it is the sphere of light with a blazing fire inside that is dancing like this, like the physical body is dancing, but emanate sounds, vibrations, like the pulsion within, give the love, give the hatred, it's all vibration. But human didn't have capacity to understand, to have this, connect to this knowledge, outer and inner, or how they are built, how they are made. So one time they decided to design Shiva Nataraja, the one with dancing, represent the cosmic dancer. And that's why when Vallalar was very young, when he went to Chidambaram temple, when he was staring at the flame, he had the first insight of and the grace of God in himself. And it is a Shiva Nataraja temple. This sun, it is the sun of all the suns. So it's like it is the first thing that is creating out of nothingness. And this you find it in every tradition. Or it's a circle, sphere of light. Even in Tao you have it. The circle before the yin and the yang start to be formed. And many like this. So what we call, if we have this mental knowledge, but now it needs to become inside. It means that you need to be able to experience it. And when you are able to experience it in its manifestation, of course, maybe at first you experience your true nature 1 second, 2 seconds, then 1 minute, And to be able to get there, it is important to have good guidance with a suitable teacher that really can point out to you or give you methods that are suitable for yourself. So you can rediscover you, because it's always there. You know, you always be some moment where you're in your natural state, but you're not able to recognize it. So normally the teacher is there to help you to recognize this. And when you start to recognize it, you will feel, for sure, the compassion is going to awaken. Because this essence in you is full of compassion, is full of love, is full of bliss and wisdom, and so many other qualities. But you have to touch it first. And this is the fastest way, is to be able to reach to this point. If you experience 1 second, 2 seconds, it will be more purification than any what they call purification practice you will be doing. Or tapas. I check the time just to make sure. Yeah. Goes fast. I want to leave some space for questions, so I'm going to move on a little. So here, in conclusion to this first part here, like I talk about knowledge. Most important first, do what is necessary. Do some practice. Find the right teacher to help you to go back to your true nature. To let this true nature rise. And once it is coming, then the compassion awakes. And allow it to be. Let your guidance takes you wherever you need to be in your life. And put trust in all this and let it build up more and more, more and more, more and more. And this is the only true door towards immortality. And that's what Vallalar did. He understood that. He did a lot of sadhana, actually, Some people might say don't practice this, but he did a lot. When he was closing in a room and he practiced with the Jyoti, there's so much more teaching in relation to that. Very similar to Dzogchen teaching about how to use the light with the candle. Because when he was saying, I can see with my own eyes the quantity of light and Valam. This is part of what it is described in Hatha Yoga Dzogchen, about the vision. What is inside come out, and you can see in a dark room, you can see the light like it is daytime. And because it is you, then there's no separation in the physical body. And I can talk about it because I had those experiences. And even that, after you see the light coming out of your body in the dark. And when you have this direct experience, you just want to continue. I'd like to give some space for questions. Yes. So please, if you have any questions, feel free.
Thank you, Mr. Daya Dorj. I must say this as it is the right moment. Daya in Tamil brings the meaning of compassion. Your name is the resemblance of your teaching and practices. Thank you. I would like to open the floor for any questions for Mr. Daya Dorj. Just unmute your mic and speak away. Do any of our speakers have any questions for Mr. Daya? There was one question from the live chat. It was from Mr. Babu from Chennai, India. He asked, you explained that Vallalar's body transformed into a vast grace light. My question is, in Thiru Arutpa, Vallalar said that the physical body can be saved permanently and stable without any disturbance. Nitya Degam. What I ask is, what happened to Vallalar's physical body?
Okay, good question. Physical body is still there. It's just because it had full knowledge of how it is functioning. So he has mastery over the 5 elements that compose the matter of the 5 body, the physical body. Then at will, he can decide. He can be seen in a matter or not matter. This is his achievement. Physical body is still there, but just into light form. It's as simple as that. Does that answer your question?
I think it certainly does. Thank you, Mr. Daya.
You're welcome.
I think we also have, oh, sorry. Yes, Mr. Daya.
I'm Aruljothi. Thank you, Ma. Very excellent speech, Mr. Daya George, because it is from your heart. It's not from your tongue. That's the main difference. Whatever is said, it's come from your inner Atma. That's why it is alive. Your whole lecture was alive. I can feel that. And you shared one experiences that even when your body, even your own physical body can emanate light when you are meditating. Even in the dark, you can see the light emanating. I'm very glad that I'm meeting a person who is having the same experience of mine. I'm very glad about that. When you experience all these things, Mr. Daya, have you ever experienced any sound, this cosmic sound coming to your ears before seeing that light from your body? I just want to compare my experience with you. That's why I'm asking this question to you, because I'm also a staunch follower of Vallalar.
No.
Yeah, please.
Not necessary. Not necessary. You might sometime, but not necessary. Not obligation.
Good, Mr. Daya. I'm very glad that you gave a different, look for the Aruljothi mantra. The way in which you explain, it's a personal experience what you have been expressing. There are a lot of explanations for that in a philosophical way, so many ways. The way in which you express, it's from your inner self again. Congratulations, Mr. Daya.
Nandri.
Nandri.
Thank you, Mr. Daya.
Thank
I
you, Ma.
think Mr. Romershi also had a question for Mr. Daya.
Yes. Daya, since you have a background in Dzogchen, did you experience dark retreats in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, or did you experience dark retreats outside of the Tibetan Buddhist tradition? And if you did experience them in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, can you describe what those dark retreats were like?
Yes. I received teaching from the Tibetan tradition, so the Yanti practices from my teacher. And I have some past memories from the one from the Essenes, which is very similar to Vallalar approach. What do you want me to describe? I'm not sure I understand what you would like me to describe.
What are the life parameters like?
I was wondering how the dark retreats were held in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, because I'm familiar with dark retreats that are being held today all over the world, actually, in many countries. And I was wondering how dark retreats were held in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition.
Okay. It depends on the schools. You know, I know in the Bon tradition it's different than what I received from my teacher, the Dzogchen approach. But his teaching is very direct, simplified. And so the practice are also very simple. So I did it like this. And I was not able to be in the proper space to do the retreat, but I did with what I had. You know, it was actually a room that was turned into the dark. So it's not like when you are in nature and isolated and all this. So it's a bit more difficult in some ways because you are exposed to outer influences, and also made my house into dark. So it's a bit different. But the way I practice is yeah, it's for my teacher. Like this year now, I cannot really explain or say. I think I'm not supposed to somehow. But I don't want to keep anything secret. It's very simple way. And if your practice has come to a point where it's strong enough, then you go to a dark. It's almost nothing to do. Just by being there and applying the teaching that you apply during the daytime, because there is no difference between day and night, then things will manifest. And of course, I use my own knowledge also, things that have been revealed to me and that are very suitable for my being and the way I understand my body. So I had capacity to realign my inner prana very fast. So the problematic in the dark, especially, but I have a lot of vata, vata pitta, but when I'm in dark, vata gets dominant, is to manage the lung, the inner pranas. So that was my main concentration, and then I just do what I learned by just sitting and doing nothing. Yeah, and then that's how I made it, and had the direct experience. Does that answer your question?
Thank you.
In some ways.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ramrishi. And thank you, Mr. Daya, for sharing all your beautiful spiritual experiences, especially in Vallalar. Is something that every Sanmargi longs for, including me. Thank you for sharing decades of experiences with us.
Thank you.
Thank you. We will now have a 15 minutes refreshment break from our speakers. During this time, there will be a video played on veganism and compassion. Once again, thank you to everyone for dialing in. We will be back with our next session of speakers very soon.
हाय, मैं हूं शेफ रणवीर बरार और मैं आ गया हूं आपका ब्रेकफास्ट का नजरिया बदलने के लिए विद सम क्विक नरिशिंग.
My name is Sailesh Rao, and I'm one of the original engineers of the internet. In 2014, researchers at the World Wildlife Fund released a report saying that between 1970 and 2010, in just 40 years, the population of wild vertebrates decreased by 52%. Then 2 years later, they released a second report saying that between 1970 and 2012, the population of wild vertebrates decreased by 58%. So from these two data points, you can perform a simple math calculation to tell you that the current rate of decline, 100% of wild vertebrates will be gone by 2026. This is year zero, the year when all wild animals are gone. It turns out that animal agriculture is not only the number one source of carbon emissions, it is also the number one source of land use on the planet. All over the world, humans are destroying original forests to make room for grazing animals or to grow crops for feeding animals. And then humans are using sophisticated geolocating technology to locate the last remaining schools of fish. And finally, we are pouring all these toxins into the environment, which is killing insects and which kills the birds which eat those insects. So we are attacking wild animals on land, in the ocean, and in the air. And this leaves wild animals no room to survive. We did some calculations. We took all the land that is currently being used for animal agriculture and restored the native forests that were there on that land in 1800. And it turns out not only that he could sequester more carbon than we have added to the atmosphere since 1750, but he also restored the natural habitat for wild animals to live. Is there a world too? So this is entirely possible. We can bring back the forests and we can heal the climate. And in the process, ensure that year zero never becomes a reality.
Greetings. This is Dr. Will Tuttle, author of a book entitled The World Peace Diet, Eating for Spiritual Health and Social Harmony. We are delighted to let you know that we will be coming to India in October, November of 2017, my wife Madeline and I, to share ideas from the World Peace Diet. What is the World Peace Diet? It's a plant-based way of eating and living that's based on the interconnectedness of all life. I am so deeply respectful and honoring of India as a nation and as a culture and a people. The great sages and saints and mystics from India have been shining the light of wisdom and truth for hundreds and thousands of years. And this light has blessed not only myself, but millions of people from all times and places. The ideas like ahimsa or nonviolence, satyagraha or truth power, and many other teachings that are really at the foundation of a healthy society come from India. The idea of vegetarianism has come from India, and I think really the idea of veganism has its roots in the wisdom of India. And so we'll be talking about this and the World Peace Diet way of living, and the great gift that we can give to the world by questioning the official stories in our society and connecting with our own inner wisdom. There's a great saying by Krishnamurti. He said, it's not a good idea to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society. So each one of us, I think, can be part of a solution to the problems that we're facing in our world today. We can connect with our inner wisdom. We can share the ideas and teachings that have ancient roots and also are in alignment with modern scientific teachings on environmental sustainability, on physical health, on cultural health, on psychological health and spiritual health. And together we can make a difference. So please join us. Let your friends and families and colleagues know about our lecture tour. You can find out more about our tour at worldpeacediet.com and online and other places. And join us for this lecture tour, and together we can transform our society and leave a world for our children that's filled with the possibility of freedom and peace and health for the benefit of all. Thank you very much.
Arulperum Jodi, Taniperum Karuni, Arulperum Jodi. Vanakkam in Tamil is Namaskar in Sanskrit. Today I felt like putting back the white robe here, white dress. I spent 14 years going to South India every year at Vallalar place, and this is how I wrote the 3 books, and the main one is this one, Grace Light Yoga in 5 Steps. And today I felt like sharing about this. Vallalar teaching is very much similar in many aspects to Christ's way. Vallalar is considered as the king of the Siddhas. Siddhas are the ones who have realized divine powers. Vallalar or Ramalinga Swami transformed his physical body in pure body of light while he was alive. And is considered even by the government, Indian government, as immortal, so not dead. You know, even the temple that he built, like here in Sabai, still is in his name. The main Maha Mantra, or the only Maha Mantra that Vallalar has transmitted, is the one I was singing at the beginning. That means vast grace light, supreme compassion, vast grace light. So in the first step we have a movement of aspiration from our inner divine, or inner being, but maybe now we don't recognize as divine. We aspire to outer divine, so to the higher planes, and we direct the invocation and say, oh, vast grace light, which is like God. You're calling upon God about this quality of pure light and knowledge, and all the attributes like compassion, love, bliss associated with it. So you're calling Arulperum Joti, vast grace light. When you say again vast grace light, Arulperum Joti, it's like this light up there resonate because it hears you, and you resonate and you say, oh, look at this person down below. It's like a small, and it's calling after me. He needs help, so you resonate. So by compassion, the divine, the Arulperum Joti, or the higher consciousness, come back to you. And the grace is coming down. And when it's coming back to you with compassion and love, and come touch your heart. And by touching your heart starts to open. And we have Taniperum Karuni, supreme compassion. But this supreme compassion within yourself is awakened by the grace that you receive, the descent.
in your physical body. And when it descends and touch you, touch your heart, and then your heart opens up. And because the heart's opened up, then on the last phrase, Aruljothi, only then you are becoming like the Aruljothi from above, the Absolute, because you are the divine.
Welcome back to yet another eventful day of the Global Knowledge Share Series. I am Pradhani Ramesh from Melbourne, Australia, and I'll be your MC for the rest of the afternoon. Hope everyone has had a good short little breather to rejuvenate and process all the inspiring spiritual information that has been shared through this amazing series so far. Our journey today is about to continue further with more enlightening knowledge that is just yet to be presented, and I am certain that all viewers are eager to hear from our astonishing speakers. And without any further delay, let's get straight into it. Just a reminder of the little house rule for today. If any question arises, please send them through to the link on the discussion page, and they will be answered at the end of each speaker's session's Q&A. Our next speaker for this evening is an American-born yogi who has studied Vedanta, Advaita, Zen Taoism, Tibetan Buddhism, Sufism, Gnostic Christianity, and Native American spiritual traditions. This spiritual speaker is dedicated to bringing the divine knowledge of ancient traditions of the Siddhas to all who long to realize the divine, along with sincerely wishing that all people discover the infinite joy that is their true nature. This spiritual speaker is none other than Mr. Romershi Siddhanath. With all due respect, I would like to humbly welcome Mr. Romershi Siddhanath to give us his speech on Siddhas are universal.
Namaste, namaskar. It's wonderful to be here today with all of you around the world. I'd like to thank the people who organized this conference and just say that it is my great honor to be here. My wife and I have been studying Eastern spiritual traditions for over 50 years, actually a combined 100 years. We became vegetarians when we were 16 years old. I'm 72 years old now. So we've been vegetarians for a long time. We've been practicing yoga. We've been meditating. We've studied with many great masters. We've even been the attendants, personal attendants to great masters. We created retreats, Dharma centers in America, Europe, and Asia. And we moved to India in 2006, and we lived there for 7 years. And then for the last 10 years, we've been taking people on spiritual pilgrimages. When we came back from India, we started giving seminars. We wanted to give back what we had learned in India. For those 7 years that we lived in India, we dove deep into the vast ocean of Indian spirituality. We traveled all over India. We met many great masters. And then when we came back to America, we wanted to give back to society. So we began giving seminars, and these were free seminars. We gave 600 free seminars on the wisdom of the Siddha saints. We traveled the length and breadth of America and gave over 600 seminars. It was the most wonderful period of our entire life. Well, other than right now, because right now is pretty wonderful also. But today I'd like to share with you some highlights of that seminar that we gave 600 times across America. So I will now begin the presentation. Hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, it's not sharing, but there. Okay. Very good. Let me see if I can remove these on the right. Mm-hmm.
There's chat boxes sometimes on the right.
Well,
Maybe just this.
can you call him on the phone and ask him how to get rid of these windows?
Maybe just click on that left thing. I don't know.
So the screen is clear. You can go ahead.
Okay.
Do you see the windows on the far right?
No, we are saying only Siddhas are universal. That's alone.
Very good. Very good. So siddhas are universal. That's the theme of this presentation. Many people think of siddhas as being Indian, but there were siddhas all over the world, in many countries, maybe all countries even. This is a quote from Shakespeare. We always begin every presentation with this quote: "There are more things in heaven and earth, Horatio,